Hi everyone, welcome to Video Boys Reviews. I'm Kenneth.
I'm Matt.
I'm David.
And we just saw The Hobbit Part 2, The Desolation of Smaug. So, one of you guys, what is the plot to The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug?
Alright, so Thorin the Dwarf is the true king under the mountain, but his kingdom has been taken over by a dragon named Smaug who breathes fire on everyone and kills everyone. And the only way he can possibly recover his kingdom is to summon all the armies of the dwarfs, but he can only do that if he has the Arkenstone. Unfortunately, the Arkenstone is lost in Smaug's treasure hoard, so they need to steal it from Smaug, and so Bilbo is going to do that for him. That's why he's a burglar. So I guess that has been the plot all along in the Hobbit movies, but we only really get the backstory in this movie.
Yeah. Let's see, David, what did you think of the movie? And you can compare it to the first one and so on. So.
I liked it way better than the first one. The first one I thought was like completely boring. So this one was cool. It had a lot more action in it. It was kind of what I thought it was going to be, like a lot of building up to the third movie, you know. But, you know what? It was good.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And Matt, what did you think of the film?
Well, going through this movie about halfway through, I was thinking, well, you know, I kind of was heavily critical of the first movie. I thought it had really good scenes, but overall it was a bad movie because it was just too over the top. There were too many sort of non sequitur random things from the other Lord of the Rings stuff. But in this one, it turned out a lot of those things weren't random. They were just setting up for the later movie, so it sort of justified a lot of those things to me. So maybe about halfway through, I was thinking, okay, this is a better movie than I thought. But then as it went on, it really lost me. There was just so many over-the-top Peter Jackson-style crazy things going on. I really wanted to like this movie, and it was getting better and better, and then all of a sudden, everything just sort of crashed for me. It got so totally ridiculous that I couldn't be invested in it anymore. And the ending, I don't know how they're going to resolve it. It's like now the war for Middle-earth is starting early, I guess, and I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to end in some kind of crazy epic Peter Jackson battle.
You know it.
I don't know. I don't know. Okay.
Well, all three of us have read The Hobbit at some point. I read it. I actually have the virtue of having read it just a few days ago. Read the whole thing.
So you're fresh.
I'm fresh.
What's going on?
But I'm also the only one of us who hasn't seen An Unexpected Journey, the first one. So there might be things you might need to help me out on. But this film, just looking at the novel as compared to the movie, the emphasis is completely different. So this film has a lot of subplots and so forth, and the book itself it's heavily focused on Bilbo. So everything is from Bilbo's perspective, and whereas with this one we have a subplot with Bard, you have a subplot with Gandalf, a subplot with the dwarf Keely, and you have a subplot with the invented character Toriel. So there's so much.
Yeah, I don't remember her from the book.
Yeah, she was in any of the books. So the character played by Evangeline Lilly, she was an invented elf for this one.
And she was like pretty important to the movie too.
Yeah,
someone on
for the subplots that they invented. But I can see where you're coming from, Matt, because the first half, the things that are being set up, they make sense. And then halfway through, there's a subplot about the dwarf Keely. I think it was Keely or Feely, or one of them that rhymes with that.
Yeah. And
he gets poisoned, and then something very similar to the original Lord of the Rings movies happens, where the elf woman Toriel, who was invented for the movie, she has to heal him, just like not Kate Winslet, I forgot her name, Galadriel from the original, she helped Gimli. So it's like they're copying stuff from the trilogy and putting it into The Hobbit, and they don't really need to. I mean, one major thing I think this film was missing, and I enjoyed the movie overall, is the plot about Bilbo. So one of the great things I thought about the novel was Bilbo is really weak compared to the dwarves, and he's basically weak compared to he's weak compared to everyone, And and I don't know if this was covered in the first movie. I think it might have been.
Yeah.
But it was that he has to prove himself, basically. And this part of the novel was entirely focused on him basically showing the dwarves and showing everyone that he's smarter than he seems to be. And that plot was gone.
Well, they do a bit of that in the first one. In fact, they kind of do Bilbo's whole character arc in the first one. So he does all the proving bits in like the Misty Mountains, where he sort of solves all the goblin stuff for them.
Yeah.
And at the end, he gives this little speech about how I understand what it's like to love your home and like you've lost yours, and that means a lot to me. So I'm going to help you, right? So his character arc almost finishes right at the end of the first movie.
Oh, okay. So that's kind of disappointing to me because the first movie, that part of the book, it wasn't. He was basically a coward that whole part in the book, and then with this part, there were a lot of exciting things that happened. There's the spiders, there's the elves, there's the barrel ride through the lake,
and Bilbo is like a badass in this movie. He's like stabbing spiders. He stabs the orcs. He's always like the first one to stab something. Is Bilbo.
Yep.
He saves their lives like 3 times or something.
Yeah, he does. He does. And
he does most of the work.
And that's the part I liked, actually. And I think that covers the first half of the movie. But they didn't really set that up as well as they could have, because one of the great parts in the book for me was, okay, Gandalf is telling all the dwarves, all right, I'm going to leave. And then in the book, the dwarves are just like, wait, you've been saving our asses throughout the whole first part of this story, and you're going to leave? And he said, don't worry, Bilbo can take care of it. And they're like, what, this little pussy hobbit, this hobbit that can't do anything?
Yeah.
He can't, and he's going to save us. And then that whole part of the book is him proving he's smarter, he's able, he's nimble, but that's gone, because when Gandalf leaves, it's like, okay, bye Gandalf, and then we go into Mirkwood or something, and it's like, it really feels like something's lost there. I mean, the adventure is still there, but
Well, I know what you mean. I was also just a bit disappointed that there wasn't that much Gandalf in the movie. It was like he's in there for like 10 minutes maybe.
Yeah. And
he's just like, well, you guys go on the adventure. I'll just meet up with you later, and he actually never does.
Alright, well, I want to talk about some things I really liked about the movie, because I have tons of bad things to say about the movie, but I don't want to make it seem like I'm just ready to hate this movie. I feel like by the time the third movie comes around, there's going to be enough material here where you could make like an excellent 2-hour Hobbit movie. So I just editing it down in an extreme way, kind of like how some people have edited down the Star Wars prequels, the coherent one prequel movie. But I think there's a lot of great scenes. So
let's talk about the things.
A lot of the Bilbo stuff in this movie is really good. It doesn't have much to do with his character arc, but I think just purely as cinematic scenes, they're good. Like when he's trying to sneak around Smaug's treasure hoard, and he's like making the little faces when like Smaug is waking up and stuff. I thought that was really funny. He's trying to talk to Smaug, and it's a lot of clever stuff is going on. I like when the dwarves fight, on the river scene. They're like tossing weapons back to each other. It's kind of supposed to be reminiscent of the dish throwing scene where they're throwing all Bilbo dishes around. It's kind of like, it's more of the tone of what I expected from the Hobbit movie. It's less the Peter Jackson, everything has to be over the top epic Lord of the Rings stuff, and it's more of the the dwarves they're not. I mean, they're a little bit funny. It's like even the fighting is sort of like, it's almost like slapstick. Like they had this great sequence where one of the dwarves, they're riding in the barrels down the river, running away from the orcs or the goblins. I have actually forgotten which is which now. And his barrel bounces onto the land and hits a couple of them.
Oh yes.
And I'm thinking, okay, it's going to hit a couple of them. He's going to go back in the water, but it just keeps going. He just keeps killing them, like boom, boom, boom. And he like racks up like more orcs killed per second than like Legolas or whatever. He's just
it's like a Donkey Kong
thing. And it's great. And like I said, they're they dodge or whatever, and they grab the weapon, and they're tossing it to each other. Like it's like they're having a good old time. It's just a very lighthearted sort of fight scene.
Mhm.
You know, I love that kind of thing.
It's kind of like Jackie Chan style action.
Yeah, like a drunken master kind of fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. Bilbo, I think, is a very likable character in these movies. He's sort of just very down to earth. Like they have the scene where Bard is ferrying them over, and it's like they're like, "Oh, this ferryman, blah blah." Like suspicious. It's like, "Oh, it's Bard. His name is Bard." How do you know that? Well, I asked him.
Yes, that was great.
he just seems very sensible.
Yeah. He's the normal guy.
Yeah, well, before we get into the bad parts and all that, I just want to say, like, I thought this movie, this was one of the kind of movies where I was in a theater and I'm like, you know, I'm actually getting my money's worth here. Like, you know, it's pretty good. It's a pretty damn good movie. I can tell they put a lot of money.
Yeah, they're definitely doing their best to give you a good theatrical experience.
Yeah, and every scene is just like we're trying to really get you into this world, and you know.
I have to say, Stephen Fry as the king of Lake Town, or whatever that was, was amazing. I just every scene he's in, I was just like cackling. It was
me too. Yeah, he's perfect. You know, he kind of has that slimy nature to him, but at this and you see like really you see the egotism of his character. And there's one part where Bard is running through the lake town, and you see a giant statue of
right. You see giant portraits of him and stuff in the background.
Yeah,
it's like sight gags.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. And David, I remember you were talking about his assistant.
Oh yeah, that guy.
The guy with the unibrow.
I just thought it was funny. He had this like creepy like thing to him.
Yeah, in the theater you were saying it's like, oh, I bet this is the guy who takes his job seriously, and then he does. Yeah, that's good stuff, and I would say everything pretty much through the barrel ride is pretty solid. I mean, I think the parts where Toriel and Legolas, where they're fighting the orcs, that got overwhelming after a while because they do so much.
All right, well, let's get into this because I'm sick of Legolas. I've had enough of Legolas. Legolas has become boring to me. Like, so in the original movies, he has all these cool. They do a really good job of emphasizing how dexterous elves are. You know, like he'll just to dodge something, he'll maybe just lean back inhumanly far. You know, you're just like, oh wow, that's neat. He'll just perform some amazing feat of shooting somebody point blank or really far away, whatever. He can do anything. But it just wears you down. Like I remember in the third Lord of the Rings movie, there's a point where there's a giant Oliphant, rampaging, destroying the armor, and he kills one by himself by jumping out like he's Spider-Man or something. It's just like, you can't have Spider-Man in this story. He's just, if Legolas can kill that many people, why do we even have an army? We'll just send 10 elves.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I get it. They can live for hundreds of years, and they're superhumanly, like, lithe and quick.
Yeah.
But invent a plot reason for him not to be there. Because it's like...
Yeah.
Why should... There's no tension. Like, there's a scene where Thorin saves Legolas by throwing something, and it just feels completely contrived. Because I'm like, Legolas knows when people are sneaking up on him. We've seen him just kill people even though there's no visual indication he knows the person's there.
Yeah.
So this is just utterly contrived. Why didn't Legolas just kill that guy too?
Yeah. You're right. I was thinking that too. It's like, at first I was thinking they were setting up something because, Legolas doesn't get along with the dwarves in this movie. And then the fact that Thorin saved his life, he would be grateful or something. But because of the way it's set up, the way you're talking about is probably later on Thorin would say, I saved your life. He's like, I could have killed him. So what doesn't really play into them as a character. And Legolas, David, I'm not sure if you remember, Legolas he was in the trilogy, but he wasn't in The Hobbit. So so it's like
he was not in The Hobbit. And there are some posters for the second movie that it says The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. Who's on the poster? Legolas and Tariel Elf. There is no Hobbit. It's just like, really, and it's so much Legolas. I feel like if you had a couple more scenes in there, this could be a movie about the love triangle between Legolas, who is not in The Hobbit, Tariel, who doesn't exist in The Hobbit, and then the dwarf guy, who is just another dwarf in The Hobbit.
Right.
A couple more scenes, and that would be what the movie is about. There's so much of it.
It's true. It's true. It kind of it eats up. Whenever they kept cutting back to, I guess it's Keely's subplot, and they kept cutting to him when they're fighting the dragon. So I find myself like really getting into their fight with Smaug, and then it cuts back to Lake Town, and then I still have to heal him, and I have to do this whole thing. It's like,
no, I hope they heal Keely.
Yeah, even though his character doesn't have like a huge impact on events that you're going to see later.
What happens in the book? Does he still get shot with an arrow and all that? Or?
No, there's no subplot about it. In fact, in the book, all 13 elves, all 13 dwarves. Yeah, all 13 dwarves make it to the mountain. None of them stay behind in Lake Town. In regards to them adding stuff that maybe doesn't need to be there, what I do like, even though I think they added too much of it, was the stuff with Bard. Because if you're reading the Hobbit novel, Bard plays a big role in defeating Smaug, and not really spoiling anything. But
yeah, I mean, if you watch this movie, you know what's going to happen in the third movie regarding.
Yeah. And they talk about the arrow and the black arrow, but in the book, Bard is introduced in the part where he fights Smaug. So it's like we have no context for this character, and then we learn about him later. Whereas this one, I think, is doing a good job of letting us get to know him before that happens. So I think that's setting that up pretty well. So I like that addition. But I was talking to David about this in the theater. They had this really big subplot about him sneaking around, and him not being in favor with the master of the town, and it felt like they were overly developing this. I mean,
I think they want you to sympathize with Lake Town.
Yeah.
Because they have the whole thing about Smaug is going to destroy Lake Town. That's the cliffhanger, the what is it? The lowest point in the hero's journey, or whatever. It's Han Solo is trapped in carbonite at the end of Empire Strikes Back. So Smaug is on his way to Lake Town. Oh no.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. Developing the characters of Lake Town, but I really question how much of the additions needed to be there. Like in the book, they get to Lake Town, they're welcomed by all of the lake people. In this one, we have like a 20-minute scene of Bard sneaking them in.
That whole thing, but it took like 45 minutes, man. So long.
Yeah, it's this whole plot about him sneaking the dwarves into Lake Town, and they have to lie low for a long time.
They set up this whole antagonism between them and the ruler of Lake Town. Bard tells him that, you were in trouble with the elves, and all of our trade comes from the elves, so this guy's not going to like you. But it turns out that guy loves him.
Yeah.
Like, all Thorin has to do is just explain who he is, and they have a whole mythology based around these people and how great their city used to be in. Like, everybody loves them. So, why did we sneak into Lake Town?
It's true. And then there's a part where they arrest Bard for no reason.
Yeah, he had to like sneak around his town to go anywhere. Like if he leaves for some reason, they arrest him.
I get that the master of the town doesn't like him, but all he did was leave his house, and then the guards stand right in front of him and said, and then he says, "What's the charge?" And he said, "We'll think of something."
Yeah,
I guess the idea is like Bard is unpopular enough now, or the king of Lake Town is popular enough now that he has the whole dwarf thing going for him. They can finally just get rid of Bard without causing any turmoil.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I mean, because in the third part, Bard and the master of the town, there's a big argument between them about who's responsible for what and so on. And I guess they're setting that up, but I think they're kind of blowing their wad with this plot line. It's just like, we need to contrive something really big to happen to these characters so that way we care about them later.
That's a good way of describing this movie. Contriving really big things. So it's going on left and right. It's,
Yeah.
There's cooking up some massive payoff.
Yeah. I think one of the over-the-top things I liked was them battling Smaug.
Okay, I hated this. So
You
let's
hated
talk
this.
about this.
All right.
So for people who are not aware,
Yeah.
in this movie, the dwarves have a massive Rube Goldberg machine. If you ever played the game Mousetrap, the dwarves have a version of this that involves creating a giant statue made out of pure gold, which is apparently about to happen the moment before the dwarves left when Smaug attacked. This whole thing is set up to make this giant statue of gold, and they trick Smaug into getting molten gold dumped on him.
Right.
And this is a long fight during which many of the dwarves probably should have died. They fell from a great height, and like there's so many near misses where Smaug is like inches away from Thorin and stuff, and then at the end they dump the Thorin is just like standing there in front of Smaug. He's like, "Fuck you, buddy," and then dumps the gold on him.
Yeah.
So Kenneth, why is that a good scene?
All right. Thank you. Well, I just I like the concept of all the dwarves giving each of them as groups, like giving them something to do. I mean, just them working as a team and so on. I mean, yes, I will agree that it was too long, but I do like the way it was filmed. I do like, that they're giving us a little more, but I think maybe you don't like this scene because we've had so much over the top stuff already happening. I think maybe if none of that stuff beforehand was happening, like maybe appreciate this more. I don't know, maybe not. But.
Well, I think it seems like it comes out of nowhere. It has nothing to do with the dwarves. Like I think of the dwarves, I think, okay, the dwarves in this universe are they're very greedy, but they're also sort of craftsmen, and their cities last, a million years, and they're carved out of pure rock, and they're master builders and stuff. But it's just like they have this giant machine that makes gold statues, and they're all gonna have this fight where they are turning it on while fighting the dragon and then dumping the gold. Like, it just doesn't seem very dwarf-like to me. To me, it's like, axes and mead and, then you have the silly element with, throwing the dishes around and stuff. It's like, it's just weird. And then as far as the plot goes, it does nothing. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
This trap, you spend 20 minutes watching them fight Smaug. They're like, oh, we're going to kill him. We're going to kill Smaug. And of course, you're not going to kill Smaug because Bard is going to kill Smaug. It's just so obviously telegraphed to you. But, okay, we're going to kill Smaug. And they don't kill Smaug. And not only do they not kill Smaug, but they don't hurt Smaug at all. Nothing changes. Before they set off the trap, Smaug tells Bilbo, I'm going to kill everybody in Lake Town just to piss you off because I hate you.
Yeah.
You care about people in Lake Town, I'm going to kill everybody in Lake Town. At the end, he's like, you know what? I'm going to kill everybody in Lake Town. He goes and flies off.
Yes.
And so, what did that accomplish? The whole story's little badass one-liner, and they all work together to do it. It's just, nothing happened.
It's probably just there. It's probably just there for, the 3D. Yeah. They got to fill it up with something.
Well, David, what did you think of that scene? I'm curious.
I feel like Bilbo didn't utilize his ring enough with Smaug. There were parts where he was talking to Smaug, it's like, why don't you put the ring on at least? Something.
Yeah, there's a weird thing where, Smaug forces Bilbo to take off the ring by somehow channeling Sauron. Like, you see Sauron's eye flash, and Bilbo has to take it off. I noticed that, too.
Oh. That was weird to me, too.
But I guess we're going to find out what the connection is between Smaug and Sauron.
But there really isn't one. I mean,
I think maybe they're gonna pay. This is gonna pay off in the next one. Maybe.
Okay, maybe. But, what you? Well, yeah, go ahead.
Staying on this scene for a minute.
Oh, sure.
At the end of the molten gold trap scene, so right before they hit him with the trap, Thorin and all the dwarves are 100 feet from Smaug, right in front of his face.
Yeah.
And they set off the trap, molten gold Smaug, and then he's like, oh, I'm mad at you. I'm going to go kill Lake Town. He flies away. Why doesn't he kill them? They're right there. They can't go anywhere because the floor is covered in molten gold. Right? He's been spending 20 minutes trying his damnedest to kill them.
And now,
Like, he's just biting them and barely missing, breathing fire and barely missing, and it's like, there they are.
all right,
They failed to kill you. You can kill them.
Okay, as if there was any doubt, you have convinced me.
Yeah, in the theater, I was just like, Smaug's really bad at this.
Yeah, but you know,
Because even at the beginning when he first saw Bilbo, he was like, I can smell your breath, like I know where you are. And he didn't even see Bilbo yet. Why is he having so much trouble trying to eat them later? Like, when they're just kind of running around hiding. Like, can he sniff them out? Like,
well, I'll admit I would have preferred the ending from the novel or of this part, because all that really happens in the novel is Bilbo goes in, he talks to Smaug. Smaug tries to kill him after they have their long talk, and then he goes to Lake Town. And it could have just been that. It could have been. I mean, I admit that. I enjoyed the visuals of the action scene, but I would have preferred it was just that. Because, as you say, you don't really miss anything.
Well, they do some cool stuff that I don't think is in the book. Like, they make Smaug into a more threatening, cunning villain because they have the whole thing where, oh, Bilbo finds the Arcane Stone right next to Smaug. Like, oh, what luck, this giant treasure pile. But then Smaug wakes up and it's clear that he knows all about Thorin's plan. And he says, he makes reference, Bilbo thinks he's being secret by, like, looking at the Arcane Stone constantly. But Smaug's like, oh, I'm almost tempted to let you have it just to see what happens. Like, the whole time of course he knows it's there. Like, it's right next to him. He knows Bilbo's coming, or somebody is coming to the Dwarf Jury. He knows Arkenstone is there. This is all just for him to, lord it over somebody and maybe gather some information. But it's not like Bilbo is getting one up over Smaug or something. He has the entire situation under control.
Yeah.
Or so
You're right.
thought.
or so.
Yeah, but then he gets tricked by this wacky
contraption. Yeah. What did you think of the subplot with Gandalf and Radagast?
I think, I don't know. I feel like you didn't see the first one.
No, I didn't. But
I
know there was a setup for
There
it.
was so much Radagast in the first. He has like his own long scene that's not connected to the rest of the plot, and this now is the payoff of that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there was way too much of that in that movie, and what we get here, of him basically telling Radagast to fulfill part of his plan and not really seeing Radagast do anything, is kind of underwhelming. I don't think we really get... Radagast is funny, and he's also funny in the first one, but it's sort of not really related to what's going on, and I don't know. I didn't really like it very much.
Yeah.
I feel like Gandalf fighting Sauron is kind of weird. I think that was a little much.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't feel like if I watch the Lord...
that they mention fighting a necromancer in the book. The way they put it was Gandalf gets a whole bunch of white wizards and they defeated a necromancer, but it was just like... Or not defeated, but stopped a necromancer. And we don't know it's Sauron in the Hobbit. We don't know the details. It was just like some side thing that's happening. And it was, in fact, intended to show Bilbo, because Bilbo thought his whole world was this adventure. And then Gandalf talking about this is his way of saying, hey, this was just one adventure. We had some other stuff going on.
Yeah,
and
this happens all the time.
Yeah, this kind of stuff happens all the time. That was the point of it.
Huh.
Whereas with this, they're elaborating on it, and they're saying, this is Sauron. He's going to come. He's going to cause chaos. And yes, I agree. It wasn't necessary. I mean, I think there's a lot you can say.
They try to address the fact that this is weird by Radagast saying, Gandalf, screw this whole dragon thing, right? Sauron is back, like... The whole world is going to be destroyed. And it's like, oh no, you want me to abandon my friends.
Yeah.
But it's like, Radagast has a point. Maybe you should stop this right now.
Yeah, and just get everyone to rally against Sauron. It's true. The whole concept of them already fighting the big stuff from the Lord of the Rings it undermines the story of The
Right.
Hobbit, and that's disappointing to me as well. I don't know.
Matt, you're making Kenneth hate this movie.
I am. That's my intention. I hated this movie. Well, I like some parts.
I didn't hate this movie. I just think what you were saying.
It's frustrating, right?
It's frustrating.
There are great scenes in this movie.
Yeah.
And there are great scenes in the first movie. I think some of the scenes in the first movie are even better than scenes in this movie. But as a whole, I don't think I can justify saying that it's good.
Okay.
It's a very weird feeling. I feel like they shouldn't have split into 3 movies. And
Well,
it would have been really, really good.
Everybody feels that way.
Everyone's thinking that, and you know what? There are a lot of people defending Peter Jackson dividing it into 3 movies. Like, well, look at all this plot that they incorporated. Well, we don't need it.
I mean, he makes a good effort. I feel like he gives a comprehensive vision of how the Hobbits could be tied plot-wise into Lord of the Rings. The problem is, I think that's a bad idea in the first place.
Yeah. Because the book itself, when it was made, Tolkien didn't have any idea he was going to make more books.
Huh.
When he made The Hobbit, it was just like a little standalone adventure. When he saw it was popular, he decided to basically make an adult version as a sequel. And that's kind of the whole point. But the fact that this is because, as you were saying, I think all the Hobbit stuff, all the dwarf stuff, I thought that was great. And everything that really tied in with their characters and so on, that was really good stuff. But then they add in all this other stuff that just doesn't need to be there. And I mean, like I said, I like the added parts with Bard because that's setting up a character who wasn't really properly set up in the original story. And all the Lake Town stuff, that's good. But then you have the subplot with Feely and is it Keely? I don't. They're the same.
The elf chick.
Well, yeah, the elf chick helping Keely the dwarf. So
yeah, I watched this movie separately.
They at least,
yeah,
I don't mind because they have to at least have like one hot chick in a movie, you know.
I was watching this movie with my brothers,
yeah,
and every time there was like a love scene about Keely and the elf, it was just like everybody's just shifting uncomfortable. Like, oh god, we have to watch this. And there's particularly one scene where he's being healed, and the elf woman's keep doing like that really weird, breathy elvish voice, which is I think what's her name does it in the original movie too. It's just very weird, like some
Kate
kind of
Blanchett.
That's some kind of like soft porn. There's just like breathing really hard while she's saying the elvish, and then he looks up and he sees her face, and it's like shining.
Yeah, it's all angelic and stuff.
God, why is this in the movie?
I like that part.
You like that part, Dave? You know, this is a frustrating movie to talk about, I think.
I can see why Matt doesn't like it, you know.
Well, David, what did you think of the movie? I mean, I know you enjoyed it overall, but like, especially compared to An Unexpected Journey.
Well,
but are there things that really stood out to you?
Well, there's obviously going to be some filler in it because they got to make 3 movies out of 1 book. You know, there's going to be stuff that isn't in the book. You know,
But I mean, you can't take one bad decision and then justify all the other bad decisions by saying, well, they had to go with the first bad decision. What do you expect?
Yeah. Well, it makes me wonder, though, because I hear that these films, some of the filler that they're adding in is stuff that was in the appendix of Return of the King. I suppose it's all the Gandalf stuff. I mean, I don't know. I haven't read Return of the Kings, but I have a feeling that all the Gandalf stuff was stuff that was there, whereas the Keely stuff and Toriel is just so obviously something that wasn't invented by Tolkien.
Yeah, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Since you haven't seen the first one,
mm-hmm.
and you've read the book,
yeah,
what did you think about the orc with all the scars and the hook hand?
Well, I know there was a subplot in the first. I read the Wikipedia page for the first movie.
Well, it's not just a subplot of the first one. That orc is like the main bad guy of the first movie.
Yeah, and
there's a big showdown at the end, but he doesn't die, obviously.
yeah, obviously. I know in the book that particular character had died years before The Hobbit takes place, and then his son is the one who's doing all of his shenanigans and stuff. And this is another one of those things like with Bard where they introduce they introduce the main orc character at basically the scene where he's fighting and then basically dies. So I didn't mind the fact that there was like a main orc guy that we're kind of following, but once again it adds something that wasn't there, because in the book they don't really have this sense of urgency. It's basically just a lighthearted adventure, and then the only parts that are really intense are when they're in danger, like the spiders and so on. And this added kind of something that felt really unnecessary, was that they have to run from location to location. Like they're going to the house owned by the bear guy, the guy who transforms into the bear, Bjorn. And they're running to his place. And there was this really great scene in the book where Gandalf says, all right, this guy, he doesn't like visitors, so we have to go in 2 at a time, and they have to do basically all this song and dance about them, basically being really polite. They all bow, and it was kind of a nice little character thing, and it was fun to read that part, and I was disappointed that had turned into basically an action scene where they're running from orcs. And the whole thing with that orc king, the main orc, it's unnecessary in this part of the story.
Yeah, I felt like they introduced him in the first movie because there's no coherent bad guy in the first part of the Hobbit. So they needed someone who would follow them the whole time. So it needs to be the wargs and the orcs, and then the big showdown at the end.
Right.
But then they didn't kill him. And so now it's kind of like he's there too, but he has nothing to do. So Sauron, who is now integrating the story, pulls him back because he's going to be in charge of this army that's now integrating the story. Because Sauron needs to be in the story, so there needs to be a giant army now, because Peter Jackson. And so now we need to invent another orc guy to be like the bad guy of this movie. But now he is kind of doing even less than the other orc guy.
Yeah.
So it's like, and he didn't even die at the end of this movie. So we're going to have a showdown with orc guy's helper, orc guy.
Yeah.
Which is probably going to involve Legolas. Because he was angry at him and made him, bleed from his nose. So he's going to have a showdown with him.
He was really mad
Thorin's going to have a showdown with Hookhand, orc guy.
Yeah.
And it's... Why?
Yeah.
Just cut them out.
Yeah. And, part of my hesitation, Matt, to just say this movie's bad is because of the good stuff in it,
Okay, well,
that's the
I remembered another good thing while you're talking about the Bjorn. So they're going into Mirkwood, and one of the dwarfs says, oh, wow, we got lucky, we didn't run into any orcs on the way here. What good luck. And then Gandalf looks back, and you see on the hill is Bjorn in bear form standing there, and he's covered in, bleeding wounds. You just see for a second. And it's damn, they didn't get lucky, right?
Yeah,
he was killing the orcs.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's a nice...
Yeah, nice detail. I didn't pick up on that when I saw it.
It's pretty quick, and he's pretty far away, but
that's neat, actually. They could have used that to just resolve the whole orc subplot. It's like he took care of the orcs for now, and then they can come back in the Battle of Five Armies, but they don't do that, obviously. They need to add a sense of urgency that doesn't need to be there. And see, David and I, when we were walking out of the movie, it's like, oh yeah, that was pretty good. We're not really evaluating the movie too much, and I think it's because we focused on the positives when we walked out of the movie, because the negatives were very obvious. And you were talking about Legolas in the trilogy, in the previous trilogy, he had a lot of character. You know, he was fun. Him and Gimli playing off each other. That was cool stuff. In this movie, he's so grim. He has like no character. Like if you didn't see the trilogy, and then you see Legolas in this, you just think he's just the most boring character ever. You know, he's just there to kick ass, but he has no personality at all. You know?
I think there's something about love triangles that does that to characters, makes them, because they're always like pouty, like, oh, I'm upset about this love triangle. They just become boring.
Yeah, that's kind of what I talked about in my Hunger Games Catching Fire reviews. Like when one or two of the corners of the triangle are boring, the love triangle is boring.
Huh.
So I think that's what happened here, and I don't know.
Well, maybe he gets funnier when he's older, like in other movies, you know?
Or like James Bond did.
Yeah, characters are meant to grow and change over time.
Well, the thing is, Legolas is hundreds of years old.
Yeah.
Right? So he changed that much?
He changed that much in like, what, 10, 15 years?
So another good scene I like is Bilbo sneaking around the Elf King's castle, and the Elf King, he has his ring on, so he's invisible.
Yeah.
The Elf King looks right at him. He's
Yes,
like, I
yes,
see you sneaking in there. Don't think I can't see you there. And it's like, oh shit.
He was like shitting himself.
Yeah.
But of course, there's someone else behind him.
Yes, I love that part too. When we were in the theater, we were just laughing. Just there were a lot of little bits of humor. And you were talking about Martin Freeman's performance as Bilbo, and when he's nervous, you feel it. You know, it's just, when he was going into meet Smaug for the first time, and Balin is there, just telling him, be careful, there might be a dragon, and then Bilbo's walking. And then he turns around, Balin's gone already. You see him run around the corner, and then you see like a little nervous tick from Bilbo. It's like, oh.
Yeah, I remember in the theater.
Yeah.
A little chuckle like that.
Yeah. So there's I feel like there's a good movie in here. I don't want.
Yeah.
I really just don't want to dismiss it as bad because coming out of the movie theater, it's like, oh, that was fun, and. I suppose that's kind of why I enjoyed that whole smolting gold sequence. And it's just like, oh, it's lighthearted fun. But the way you break it down is it doesn't need to be there. And it's true. It doesn't. And I think...
Maybe I like the movie more just because I don't remember much from the book. So I don't remember the inconsistencies. I'm just like, oh, this is awesome. Oh, is the dragon going to get killed? Oh, man.
Yeah, David was saying that because David didn't pick up on the whole Bard set up with Bard and the arrow, so it's like, oh, I thought the gold was gonna kill Smaug, but it doesn't. So
I read the book, but not remembering the book, I thought it was good.
But I might have liked it better if it had some lasting effect, like maybe now Smaug is permanently covered in gold.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And that's why it's not only because in the books, I think Smaug had a part of his chest that was not covered in jewels, and that's why he had a weakness. But now it's because Bard's ancestor hit him with one of the black arrows and had removed the scale. So that, I guess, would make some justification for why you need Bard's ancestor to hit off the scale, because now Smaug is covered in, this extra layer of molten gold. And maybe it, wounds him or something. Like, he's more desperate, more crazy, instead of just... He just sort of shakes it off. Like
he does. He
just shakes, spin in a circle, and
then all the gold just flies off. Yeah.
It looked like it didn't even hurt him. Like he was fine.
Yeah, it didn't bother him. And yeah. But like I said, there's a good movie in here. Yeah. There really is, and maybe like you suggested, Matt, take all three movies when they're done.
I mean, if you
take out all the dead weight.
Incredibly cold to this movie, decide I'm just going to take a razor to this movie, I'm going to cut out anything, big orc guy, Bjorn, you could almost cut out all appearances of the elves.
Yeah.
Well, so you could maybe even skip the existence of the elves entirely. You could cut this movie down, all of Radagast's stuff, all of Sauron's stuff, all of Saruman and Galadriel.
Yeah.
This is from the first movie.
Yeah.
There's just so much that could go and preserve the good bits and the story arcs.
Yeah.
It feels like that really is the mistake. It's making it too long.
Yeah, and if I remember when Guillermo del Toro you guys know who Guillermo del Toro is? Yeah, he did that.
Sounds familiar.
He did the Hellboy movies. He did Pacific Rim.
Oh.
He did a lot of. He did Pan's Labyrinth. He's just like this.
I love Pan's Labyrinth.
Just
That's
this
what David
really
Bowie
great
did?
designer and he was originally attached to direct these movies, and it was gonna be 2 movies, and I think even that's too long. But and he's actually credited with some of the screenplay, but I almost feel like because they got Peter Jackson, that there was a big.
Well, that kind of makes me sad because thinking of Pan's Labyrinth, that's like maybe that's a little more heavier tone.
Yeah.
Than The Hobbit. But it does have that small scale feel of like the girl is going on these adventures. There's almost trivial things like she needs to get the stones back from the frog or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it feels so significant that her little adventures. I mean, that's like the feeling of The Hobbit.
That's what
like
The Hobbit
being
is.
in the bottom of that mountain and having the ring and needing to talk with Gollum. So it's like that same feeling, only maybe a little more lighthearted. So I know that. That would have been interesting.
Yeah, it really does feel like a missed opportunity to me, because that was the charm of the novel. That's the charm of the story, is that it's about this little hobbit. He's never been on an adventure before, and he's kind of just sucked into this whole thing. And as it gets more and more complicated, he's the one who stands out the most. And in this movie, he really didn't. I mean, he did great things. He saved the dwarves like 2 or 3 times. He saves them from spires, saves them from the elves, saves them in the barrels, and he's the one. Oh, David, you wanted to talk about this part when they're unlocking the mountain.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's like the dwarves gave up.
Yeah, they gave up like as soon as the sun went down. They're like, well, looks like we're never ever gonna open this door. It's like, why? The keyhole's still there somewhere. You just gotta look for it. Like, it's not like the keyhole went somewhere. And Bilbo is even like surprised, like, what? Like, we traveled all this way, and you're just gonna leave like immediately?
Yeah, and he had the least investment in the adventure.
Yeah.
And the ones who are more invested, the dwarves who want to get back their land, get back their kingdom, they're the ones who leave first. It's like Thorin is the first one. He drops the key.
It was almost comical. I'm like, are they joking? Like, are they seriously just leaving right now?
Although, in that scene, talking about good things, there's a great callback to the previous movie.
Okay.
So he says, oh, part of the riddle of opening the door is when the wren knocks, right? And you see a little bird go up to the door and hit against it with a snail.
Yeah.
Well, in the previous movie, at the very end, the little story arc is finished, it's like happy moment, but then it shows the side of the mountain, and you're watching this bird fly up and start knocking a snail against, and you hear the echo of the tapping throughout all the chambers, and then you see Smaug opens his eyes underneath the treasure hole. And watching this movie, you're thinking, Smaug hearing that is not just, oh, Smaug exists. Like, he hears the wren knocking. He knows about this prophecy. That's how he knows Thorin is coming. Like, he's it's just a nice little callback. I like little things like that.
Yeah, that sounds nice. I mean, I didn't see the first one, but I do know, like, he wakes up at the end of the first one or something. But yeah, Matt, I think after the third one's out and all 3 are on DVD, we should do a re-edit.
Oh man, that would be so much work.
Yeah, that's David. Final thoughts on The Hobbit: The Desolation of Smaug.
Well, for someone that hasn't, doesn't really remember the book, thought it was fun. A nice fun movie. Yeah, it definitely has some unnecessary stuff in it. Some of it I did get bothered by, but as a whole, I still liked it.
Okay.
I noticed there was like an unnecessarily amount of beards in this movie. I felt like I was watching Duck Dynasty or something. But I don't know. Mm.
Matt, final thoughts on The Hobbit the Desolation of Smaug?
Well, I think we covered it pretty well. It's sort of a combination of, getting just like, oh, like, I really love the acting in the scene, or the cinematography or the writing of this scene is really great, but then, like, it's sort of undermined by the sort of arc of the movie. It doesn't really fit those pieces together in a satisfying way, and you like you said, feel like there's a good movie there.
Yeah.
But it's not the movie that you're watching.
Mm.
Yeah. And it's for that reason I'll say this is both a good movie and a bad movie. It feels like this is a director's cut of a theatrical
That's a good
film.
way of putting
Right.
it.
That
And it almost is, because the success of the previous movie gives Peter Jackson the freedom to make a director's cut as the theatrical release of the movie.
yeah.
What would you rate it, Kenneth?
Oh, on my
Yeah,
scale,
it was rated.
I will give this simultaneously a 6 and an 8. The parts I like I give an 8. The parts I don't like I give a 5.
Really?
Yeah, and I suppose if you average them, it's like a 6.5. But yeah, a lot of people really love this movie, but looking at the pieces, there's a good movie in there. There really is, and it's really frustrating seeing the good parts really undermined by the bad parts, or not so much the bad parts, just the dead weight.
Mm.
And I didn't, like I said, I didn't mind the ending battle with Smaug too much, but you make a very good point for why it doesn't need to be there, and why it's out of place. This is a really weird review for us, because with every film we have reviewed, we've all come to a consensus one way or another. I mean, sometimes individually we wouldn't agree, like with Man of Steel, we didn't agree individually, but individually we knew exactly how we felt about the movie.
Yeah.
With this one, I really feel torn, because I don't want to just say this is a bad movie, because I really love the good parts, but there's so much dead weight. There's so much that doesn't need to be there.
I think if you go back and watch the first Hobbit movie, it's exactly the same way.
Yeah. Well, that's our very thorough review of The Hobbit the Desolation of Smaug. Hope you enjoyed this review. If you disagree a lot with our opinion here, I really want to hear why what we're saying is wrong. And if you agree with us, what parts did you enjoy or agree with? So
if you liked it, click the like button.
yeah, thank you, and subscribe if you like. So thank you for watching our review, and hope you follow us with our other reviews. So bye bye.